put that as priority of mental therapy in the mix of everything else that you're actually doing as trying to do your best to be a productive man. That should be a good conversation indeed. And then in our second hour, we've got our Becoming feature. This is where we're going to be speaking about how do we become better people. It's kind of the self-development feature that we have here on our show. Today, we're going to be speaking about actually working on your public speaking. How can that be good for you? We sometimes think public speaking is specializes for certain people who are on a stage, people like me who are behind a mic. But no, actually, public speaking can be an asset for all of us. And that's what's coming up in the second hour. Our parenting and family corner, we'll be looking at parent separation anxiety. Have you ever taken your kid to school for the first time? Or maybe constantly, every time you drop your kid at school, you're like, do I really have to separate myself from this little one? And do you worry about your little one when you're away from them? So all those things are coming up on the show. Stay interacting with us on our live feed. Remember, you can join us on that streaming space. We've got a streaming on our Facebook page. So follow us on Channel Africa on our Facebook page. And also you can find it on YouTube. Our YouTube handle is at Channel Africa 1. Hey, it's going to be an exciting show. Stay with us.
Mornings Made Better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
In recent weeks, East Africa has seen a disturbing rise in human rights violations. In Kenya, digital activist Rose Njeri was arrested under the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act after creating a tool for citizens to oppose the Finance Bill 2025. Meanwhile, in Tanzania, Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan lawyer Agatha Atuhaire reported being detained, tortured, and sexually assaulted by security officers.
East Africa needs a reset. We need to get back East Africa to where the founding fathers are. When President Nyerere and his colleagues Jomo Kenyatta and the Ugandan counterparts fought for independence, they fought for independence to get Africans out of poverty, to get Africans out of slavery. The leaders who took up power have since gotten into regression.
Neto Agostino, co-leader of the United Green Movement Party.
Mornings Made Better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Interracial relationships. And now you are based in the States and you are married to a beautiful white woman, white lady.
I learned that, for us in our culture, we literally can speak our mind. I remember when we had started dating and whatnot, and, she picked up a little bit of weight. And me, I was like, oh, wow, you must be happy in this relationship because look at you. You look great. You're even picking up some weight. And she got really, really offended. And it took I think it was about a couple of hours before I could realize that, because I could tell that she was off after that. And it took me a while to figure out what it was. Until later when I was talking to her, I'm like, you're really, really off today. And then she expressed that, yeah, because you're telling me that I'm picking up some weight. And I'm like, in my culture, when you are gaining some weight, it means you're happy. Yes. So that's what I was trying to imply.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. On the move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the move.
Hey, thank you for joining us right here on Channel Africa. You with me, Benjamin Moshatama, and you're listening to us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za. Hey, thank you for joining us, where we really speak about conversations where we can become better in who we are as Africans. I love this first hour one because it's a thing that we don't really talk about. When we do speak about men, the dominating themes are that maybe we are cheaters, maybe we are not living up to society's expectations, maybe we are a violent type. Those are all the things that are mainstream that men hear about themselves all the time. And also there's all sorts of expectations that always put on us men. But the issue about our health and how we deal with our health issues is never really a big consideration. In fact, men never really go for checkups. Let's not even talk about therapy. So June is Men's Health Month, but also is acknowledged as Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this hour. And it's aimed at raising awareness of preventable health problems amongst boys and men, and also to really highlight challenges when it comes to their mental health. Today, we're going to be zooming into how anxiety, depression, or burnout affect men's ability to actually perform at work, home, or in social roles. Anxiety, depression, and burnout don't always show up as tears or breakdowns. Sometimes we hold this stuff in, and they appear in missed deadlines, short tempers, how we're constantly feeling overwhelmed, and our inability to ask for assistance. For many men, the problem to perform at work, at home, and in society can push mental health to the back burner. But what's really the cost? To speak about that, we joined on the line by our guest, that is Nazreen Karim, occupational therapist, mental health, productivity, and performance specialist. Nazreen, thank you for joining us right here on Channel Africa.
Good morning, Benjamin. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's cool to be speaking about this one because when we speak about men, we hardly consider their health. In fact, we hardly go for any checkups. I mean, if we don't go for weekly or monthly checkups or actually look at our health constantly, we are not going to actually consider therapy. So I'm sure speaking about mental health in men is something that we need to speak more about.
Absolutely, Benjamin. When we look at men from a very young age, they are taught to be tough. They're taught to be tough, to show up strong. When they start crying about pain or crying about somebody that perhaps maybe bullied them at school, they're always told, you know what, just be tough. Just be tough about it. Man up about it. Mm-hmm. And that already comes with the pressure in telling boys that, you know what, in this world, if you want to be worth something, you've got to show up without emotion.
Yeah.
And then they take on the roles of being a son, being a brother, a partner, and then they become fathers and providers of their homes. They become the employer, the employee, and with all of those roles, we find that it presents with the pressure for men to always uphold expectations and societal norms, to always show up of making sure that they are strong. It stays with them from the time that they are young all the way right through until adulthood. And, they've always got to show up appearing to be their best. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, they've also got to be on standby to go and change the tire. You know what I mean?
I like the fact that you highlighted those multiple ways of being, because in contemporary culture, we're not just having an expectation of men to be these strong men, but also we have a new kind of social media demand that we also have to be soft, we also have to be romantic, we have to be loving dads, like teddy bears to hug. So there's these multiple strong elements that we have to showcase, but there's also these emotional aspects that are also demanded from us.
Absolutely. And, when we look at men's mental health statistics, it's truly alarming because we find that 77% of men experience anxiety, stress, or depression, but 40% have never ever spoken about it. And this silence is often fueled by embarrassment or stigma because the fear for men of admitting to mental health struggles may always be seen as a weakness, failure, or inadequacy, somehow less masculine, perhaps. That's
yeah.
And that's always, and that's quite unfair. Which is why you most likely find women, expressing their emotions freely, and not to say that men aren't experiencing it, but men have been more conditioned to have to maintain that they are emotionally regulated and in control.
Yeah. And then actually inside, it's like a whole lot of things are actually happening while there's this external kind of bravado image that is being showcased, right? Let's look at that external bravado, right? Should we be dismantling it? Should we be saying, okay, as society, it's okay not to have that exterior?
So listen, that's exactly what it's all about, eh? When we look at society and the expectations that society places on men, and often I always say that it's unfair because, like when I have my patients come and see me in the practice, you always find that, when men come and they speak about their mental health aspects, it's taken them a long time to get to the point where they're now able to open up about it due to that pressure that has been on them, due to that societal expectations and norms upon them. And it usually only comes about once something, like you mentioned, it takes men often a long time to actually go for checkups. So we always find that aspects such as stress and anxiety are often rather treated following a heart attack or following a serious injury that might have brought that on, which creates that sense of, okay, fine, I have to actually see to this now. And it's okay because, you know what, it came as a result of an injury or as a result of a heart attack or as a result of a panic attack, for example.
All right, let's take a bit of a break. We'll come back to speak about the finer details of this conversation. We're speaking with Nazreen Karim, an occupational therapist, mental health, productivity and performance specialist. We're speaking about this because June is Men's Health Month, which coincides with Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So definitely this is right on par of the key themes of this month. Stay with us right here on Channel Africa. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Tami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversation.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 Summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
Hey, on the daily, it's always good to see new names on our live stream. I see you, John Masaya, on our live stream. Austin Mdeleman, I see you there. And Thompson Shunga. While you're there, let us know where you are listening to Channel Africa from. We really appreciate you coming there on our live stream. Well, today we are speaking about June being Men's Health Month, rather. And it's an important month because this is something that we don't do as men. We don't really prioritize our health when it comes to our mental capacity, because we think we've got enough capacity, right? We think we've got it. We've got the muscles, so we must have the brains. And also the expectations, they've been so imposed on us that we think that our characters should assume to those external pressures. And you think if you don't buy into the whole a man must, or a theory of men must do this or that you know what, you're not good enough, that you don't actually belong, and also that you always have to create an impression for you to be validated as a man. But all those issues actually can be a way of us avoiding the real issue of actually what's happening inside of ourselves, with our emotional health, but also more importantly, our mental health. Well, we're speaking to our guest today who's helping us on this one. We're speaking to Nazreen Karim, occupational therapist, mental health and productivity and performance specialist. Nazreen, I like the fact that you are doing all those things, and because your expertise are very broad, I really appreciate that you came on for this conversation, because performance is a way for us as men to really gauge and monitor our self-worth. And it's usually that performance that blinds us from that mental health recognition. How do we navigate the two dynamics?
Thank you, Benjamin. So when we look at performance, we look at all the aspects surrounding that. So first of all, when we look at men, we do acknowledge men as being human as well. They have to be human,
please.
you know?
We're not AI.
Exactly. So when we look at men and we look at all the hats that are worn and all the roles that come with that, we also look at the context that the individual is coming from, and we look at the environment as well. And all of that plays a role in terms of the way that men perform generally. So when we look at aspects such as the impact of playing those roles, the impact of being a provider, the impact of putting bread on the table, the impact of maintaining that image at work, the impact of maintaining that expectation in a leadership role at work as well, or even that impact of working oneself up as a man in order to get to that role, for example, and showing up as a partner and showing up as a parent, as being the exemplary figure or the exemplary head of the household. It's impossible that we are not going to find the impact of stress, which impacts a man. And this often manifests as burnout, when there's been an impact of immense stress, which has often been pent up. And in fact, the World Health Organization actually highlights burnout as being defined as a symptom, that the syndrome that's conceptualized resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And when we look at the workplace stress, it plays a big role as well in men and the big impact of stress resulting as burnout. Yeah.
And what should we be doing? Because in one space, we have to consider the fact that we can't be less productive and, be kind of laissez-faire about things. I think we have to approach this in a way that is going to be constructive, because you can't say, man, take a chill pill, go on a holiday, travel the world and forget your family back home. The pressures are there and they're actually real. What would you advise men to actually do to deal with some of their mental health issues? Because the thing is, we don't know that the mental health issues are there because we think the conditioning is okay. The fact that stress is a normal thing for us men, we should just deal with it and just move on. However, I'm sure you can give us some tips to actually deal with these stresses and find time out to actually focus on our inner selves.
Absolutely. So, it's such a good question, and it's a very broad one as well. I think it's so important that we enable our men to, first of all, acknowledge the fact that, when it comes to stress, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to burnout, that it is a real silent wound that often can't be seen, number one, and that it does need attention, and it does impact productivity. It impacts cognitive skills. It impacts one's ability to perform not only at work, but also in all of the roles we have mentioned. It impacts relationships as well. So first of all, to importantly acknowledge the fact that it is a reality and it does impact a person's performance physically and mentally, emotionally and developmentally, number one. And then number two, we need to also enable and normalize conversations for men and mental health. And you know what? It starts with the simple things. It's all about the little things. So having simple conversations about it in the workplace, among colleagues, those coffee meetings that take place, to actually normalize having workplace conversations about mental health. So when men are talking about the workload, for example, to actually ask, how are you coping with everything? How are you managing? Are you finding the balance? And to actually create a safe space for people to actually talk about mental health without the fear of judgment, and to enable a place of empathy for people to actually open up, particularly men, as well as in relationships. I always say to women that it's important to also show up for a man in terms of, as a woman, am I actually enabling that space for him to open up? Or am I going to be ready with the judgmental comments or something like that? So it's the little things that count. It starts from the context of the home environment and the workplace environment, and to have those conversations and to always check in with the people we care about
Yeah.
as to, are you okay?
I love that checking in, because the last thing that we do with men, they're the last ones that we check on, but we want them to check up on us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's so important, to be able to enable that safe space.
Yeah, and I always will say with the boys, hang out with the boys as well. There's nothing more powerful than gents hang out in one space and just talking about their challenges, because you're relating to people that actually have the same challenges as you, but also we're finding solutions in that particular dynamic. But also there's a catch-22 situation there, because you have to be with men who are going to give you great advice, help you in affirming who you are, but also more importantly, making sure that you find the best solutions for that. So thank you so much, Nazreen, for this conversation. Where can we find you if we're interested in some of your work and those who want to take up some of your expertise?
Well, absolutely. So first of all, in terms of the resources that you asked about, we do offer those EQ workshops as well, which enables men to come and speak about the emotional intelligence and aspects such as emotional and mental issues. And you are welcome to get hold of me on www.otqstotheuniverse.co.za. That's www.otqstotheuniverse.co.za.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nazreen. This has been helpful, but it's also great to hear a woman having interest in this. It's fantastic, because sometimes we think we only care amongst ourselves, but there's a lot of experts out there who get into this particular area. So thank you for joining us.
Only my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's Nazreen Karim, occupational therapist, mental health, productivity, and performance specialist. I see a lot of guys coming into our live stream there. Thank you, Gift, Dominic Banda, for joining us there. I like shouting everyone out there. Thompson Shunga, I see you there on our live stream. Ado Adam, thank you for joining us. Gents, let's talk a little bit about this. What's your take on mental health? Do you think we get taken care of as men, or do you think we are the ones taking care of others? And how do we deal with our mental health issues? Let us know on that live stream. But also tell us where you are watching us from on that live stream. Or if you're listening to us live on your radio set, a way that you can communicate with us is via our WhatsApp number +2763 406 9126. You can text us or voice note us there. Hey, it's time for us to get our sports update. It seems like things are moving into a very, very serious note when it comes to the tennis. So I'm interested in what is going to be in the bulletin when it comes to the tennis. If so, I'm just making an uneducated prediction here.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So Mozambique were the biggest winners on day one of the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025 as they defeated the host side South Africa, while Mauritius held Zimbabwe to a goalless draw at the Free State Stadium in South Africa's Free State province on Wednesday. Mozambique put up a superb second half display that says they defeated the host South Africa 1-0 thanks to a winner by Antonio Sumbani. Now, Sumbani turned the ball into the net at the back post. This after the South African side had rallied, or rather failed to clear the delivery across a 6-yard box, earning his side a precious 3 points as well as a top spot after round one in Group A. Mozambique also had a goal disallowed for offside in the first half, while South Africa missed several chances to earn at least a point. The video assistant referee has been introduced from game one of this year's tournament for the very first time in the Histories competition, and the first time an African on the African continent in a regional tournament. In the other game played on Wednesday, Mauritius held Zimbabwe to a goalless draw in the second game of the day and might also count themselves unfortunate after VAR ruled out a goal for a handball. Mauritius put up an excellent display that will have surprised many, as well as the 6-time champions Zimbabwe, and were also good value for their point against the Zimbabwean counterparts in yesterday's game. Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 137th international goal for Portugal as they came from a goal down to defeat Germany, as well as reach the Nations League final. The 40-year-old tapped in Nuno Mendes' low pass in the 68th minute for what proved to be the winner and set up a final against either France or Spain. Ronaldo's effort came just 5 minutes from after Francesco Conceição had cancelled out a 48th-minute Florian Wirtz opener for the host side. Portugal won the first tournament back in 2019, but their hopes of a second success looked slim when they fell behind in Munich. France and Spain will play in the second semi-final in Stuttgart later on tonight, with the final set for Munich on Sunday. The match also had been delayed by 10 minutes because of hailstorms in Munich as the Allianz Arena hosted a second major game of the week after last week's UEFA Champions League final between PSG as well as Inter Milan. While packed crowds in India celebrating their cricket team's victory ended in a deadly stampede on Wednesday, with 11 mainly young fines crushing to death, with the local state's chief minister confirming the news on Wednesday. Now, joyous cricket fans had come out to celebrate as well as welcome home their heroes, the Royal Challengers Bengaluru, after they defeated the Punjab Kings in a roller coaster Indian Premier League cricket final on Tuesday night. But the euphoria of the vast crowds in the southern tech city of Bengaluru ended in a disaster, with Prime Minister Narendra also calling it an absolute heart-wrenching situation that happened at the stadium yesterday. So most of the deceased are young people, including 11 who were found dead after that crash, while 47 people were injured following that crash at the stadium. On to tennis news now. Novak Djokovic continued his quest for a standalone record 25th Grand Slam title. This after defeating third seed Alexander Zverev to reach the French Open semi-finals. The 38-year-old sixth seed won 4-6, 6-3, 6-2 and 6-4 to set up a meeting with the world number one Jannik Sinner on Friday. Djokovic, who had 3 Grand Slam titles going into this tournament, lost the opening set to 2024 runner-up Zverev after being broken in the first game of the match. But the Serbian great did not drop serve again, although he had to survive a 41-shot exchange on the break point at 3-2 in the fourth set on his way to sealing a record-extending 51st Grand Slam semi-final appearance. And this is what he had to say following that performance over Zverev.
It was an amazing match. Obviously, beating one of the best players in the world on the biggest stage is something that I definitely work for, and I still push myself on a daily basis at this age to keep going because of these kind of matches, because of these kind of experiences. And it's a proof and kind of testament to myself that I can, and to others, that I can still play on the highest level, and
Staying with tennis, world number 361 Louise Bosson says she's not satisfied with defying the odds to reach the semi-finals of the French Open and wants now to fulfill a childhood dream of winning her home Grand Slam tournament. So the French woman who entered Roland Garros draws a wild card, ensured her fairy tale would continue following a 7-6, 6-3 triumph over 6-seed Mira Andreeva. The French woman has now beaten 3 seeded players en route to the last 4, where she will meet the world number 2, Coco Gauff. Bosson, appearing in her first Grand Slam main draw, was set to be a wild card at Roland Garros just last year, but had to pull out of that tournament after tearing her ACL in her knee just a week before the tournament was set to begin. But 12 months later, she now becomes the first woman in the Open era to reach the women's singles semi-finals at a French Open as a wild card, and the first French woman semi-finalist since Marion Bartoli back in 2011.
I really enjoy everything that I live here on the court and outside the court, so I will see this after. For now, I just have to prepare the match of tomorrow. I just proud of myself because it was really tough for me to go into the semi-final. Every match was really tough, so I'm just proud about how it ends every time, just like I finish the match.
And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. It's 9:39 p.m. Central African Time. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wazamalonda ku Malawi waletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Ilovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Ilovo Sugar Group Limited isiye kutumiza shuga kumaiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pamsika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Ilovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Ilovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
All right, let's quickly move on right now and get our business news from Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Good morning. At least 3 South African political parties, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Umkhonto Wesizwe Party and Action SA, in the Standing Committee on Finance have raised concerns over the fuel levy increase in this year's budget. The committee met alongside their colleagues from the National Council of Provinces to consider the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals as tabled by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana last month. Godongwana announced a 16 South African cents per litre increase for petrol and 15 cents per litre for diesel. EFF MP in the Finance Committee, Umphile Mautwe.
We reject the fuel levy increase. Beyond just the socio-economic impact, to the 4.1 billion is not worth the consequence of increasing the fuel levy. And I'm not saying this because we lost in court yesterday. It's not a political grandstanding or anything. It's just the concern about how this will impact on our people.
Still in South Africa, the Business Confidence Index produced by Rand Merchant Bank and the Bureau for Economic Research has declined by 5 points to reach 40 points in the second quarter of 2025. This implies that only 4 out of 10 business respondents in the most cyclically sensitive sectors of the economy were satisfied with prevailing business conditions. Respondents flagged ongoing global trade uncertainty and persistent local logistical challenges as key drags on business prospects. RMB economist Kiabezwe Mojapelo.
Consumer goods traders reported significant sales drops, signaling potential weakness in household demand for the second half of the year. Retail trade conditions also worsened slightly from the first quarter, with confidence dropping 8 points to 42, a level mirrored by motor dealers. Still, respondents remain relatively optimistic about business conditions and sales volumes, indicating that consumer resilience persisted. In the construction sector, particularly residential, contractors have yet to feel the benefits of past interest rate cuts, including last week's. These rate cuts may not be sufficient to reverse the trend.
Ghana's artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector is expanding rapidly, mostly outside legal oversight. This growth is driven by limited job opportunities and the promise of quick income, but is increasingly linked to environmental destruction, foreign involvement, and organized criminal networks. A new report based on 3 years of research and satellite analysis has revealed how unlicensed mining is intensifying in regions like Western and Savannah, and why enforcement efforts remain weak. Director of Extractives at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, Messena Hunter, made this comment.
I think one of the first big observations is the uptake of new technology and equipment. We're seeing a lot of advancement, and a lot of that has been introduced by foreign nationals. And so seeing, for example, the shift from just using mercury processing to using cyanide leaching, which is a lot more profitable and generates a lot more high qualities and quantities of gold.
South African steel manufacturing company ArcelorMittal stands to suffer financial losses should the U.S. impose 50% tariffs on aluminium imports. This according to trade analyst Viwe Njongwana, who weighed in on the recent development from the White House, which has raised concern among steel producers outside the U.S. Earlier during the year, ArcelorMittal announced a shutdown of its long steel business, leading to massive job cuts. Jongwana says the tariffs will increase the cost of production for companies such as ArcelorMittal.
ArcelorMittal produces steel sheets, steel rods, also for the production of components for vehicles which get exported to the U.S. So the tariffs will naturally increase the cost of production, which will therefore slow down production and therefore reduce the demand for employment, which means that they may have to lay off employment.
The International Energy Agency, IEA, says a surge in clean energy spending is expected to drive a record $3 trillion in global energy investment in 2025, despite economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. In its World Energy Investment Report, the agency says clean energy technologies, including renewables, nuclear, and energy storage, are set to attract $2.2 trillion in investment, twice the amount expected for fossil fuels. Let's have a look at financial indicators this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 479, Botswana 13 pula 79, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 552, Zambia 26 kwacha 30. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 63, Russia 78 rubles 95, India 85 rupee 85, China 71.18, South Africa 17 rand 82. $1 is at 73 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,368, platinum at $1,094 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $64.72 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Hi, I'm Tami Ngubeni, anchor of Africa in Business on Channel Africa, bringing you the African perspective.
And I'm Ashraf Garda, host of the National Pulse on SAFM, leading the conversation.
We've joined forces to bring you in-depth, exclusive G20 developments as we count down to the much-awaited inaugural G20 summit in South Africa, November 2025.
Tune in every Thursday at 16:20 Central African Time as we explore how this first G20 in Africa impacts the continent, from trade and innovation to climate and development.
It's a powerful crossover between Channel Africa and SAFM
as we bring you the G20 through an African lens.
The G20 in Africa.
Global Summit.
An African voice.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
No time to waste. Be on the move with Benjamin Moshatama and Pali Satau.
Lindo nje Batawhlawulwanga Sibonga isizwe sami Tungashisa impepho sami Thethisa abaphansi Masingakafika isikhathi sakho linda Linda Tungahlaba imbuzi uhlaba inkomo Phela imfuyo asibaye Linda 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 oh Linda oh Linda 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 oh Linda oh Mawitshela ukuthi ahlupheka ngoba uhlawulwanga ijelelelo phumejelelo Mawutshela ukuthi ahlupheka ngoba ubaba khawumazi ijelelelo phumejelelo Mawutshela ukuthi akuhlangane empilweni yakho ngenxa yesifo ijelelelo phumejelelo ngoba mina ngintandane suka kuleyo nkulumo ijelelelo phumejelelo ngoba
Evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other: Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite a billion